Final day of the Walmart Joe Martin stage race, the day that maybe defines this race the best. The Experience Fayetteville Criterium in downtown Fayetteville, Arkansas, the new mecca of cycling in America. After 2 days of racing underway here in the Echelon Racing League, starting with the Devil's Den time trial on Friday, followed by the extremely tough and long Mount Sequoia road race yesterday, where riders spent the better part of 2 hours on the trainer. Today, a little bit shorter at the just over a mile-long Experience Fayetteville Criterium course, where we expect to see some great sprinting. We watched big separation at the front yesterday in the Mount Sequoia road race, but we may not see the same today as the Walmart Joe Martin stage race continues for day 3 here in the Echelon Racing League. Brad Soner here with Ellen Noble as we get into my favorite discipline of racing. It is the Criterium Day. Ellen, there's nothing more exciting than a crit, especially this one coming at the end of a stage race. A lot of things could change, although the GC getting sorted out at the top sections, but we'll be watching for riders to not only pick up a few seconds here, but also looking for stage wins.
Absolutely. I think with the large gaps that we're starting to see at the front of our GC, it feels like that's a little bit more sorted, but still anyone's day for the stage win, and that's what makes the final stage being a criterium so exciting.
Elite men up first. Let's talk about how this one played out yesterday on Mount Sequoia before we get into talking more about the criterium today. It started with a group that was pretty active. The trademark Luca Versli attack early on started to lift the tempo early. You see here just a few minutes in, and already Versli had it into the red zone. That brought it down to a group of 3 riders, including GC leader Zach Nair in this front group of 3. So Versli was trying to get rid of Nair. He's about 9 seconds down on GC, knew that he had to make big moves, and Copsey just along for the ride in that group of 3. But Nair took it to him, attacking on the final climb inside the last 500 meters. That gave him plenty of separation and even further cemented his GC lead. So Zach Nair having a great weekend so far, winning the time trial, winning the road race. Ellen, can he win the criterium today as well?
I'm sure he would like to. Seeing the intensity with which he finished yesterday's stage, I have to expect that he has a little bit in the tank for today.
You see Nair doing a 4.5 watt per kilo effort, pretty efficient out there. Most of the top 4 riders, you can see the riders that were in that separation, they really held each other to a high standard out there in that group, leaving them all with a really high watt per kilo average. So Nair gets the win yesterday, 22 seconds ahead of Versli now in the GC, and Igor Kopsy down in 3rd overall at 50 seconds back. So Nair going to have plenty of time to play with today. It's going to be really tough for Versli to take that much time back on a criterium. If it was 2 or 3 seconds, I would say maybe he could do it. Maybe he'd be able to get the space. But the way that we saw Zach Nair riding Friday and Saturday, I have a hard time seeing how you take a major chunk of time back from Zach Nair on a day like today. So you see Versli starts the day 30 seconds down. That's the magic number for him today to try to make up. Igor Kopsy at 1:48 back. That's not going to change. As you look further back here for some bigger battles, it's really like 7th and 8th. You see Simon Walter, Jakob Bjorklund. Those numbers could change, so we'll be watching riders like Saad Kerdine trying to have a good criterium here to move up in the GC this weekend, but that would also move us up into the GC overall.
Day 3, stage 3, and certainly what the Walmart Joe Martin stage race is known for, the Fayetteville Criterium, the Experience Fayetteville Criterium. A 1.2 mile course and a tough climb, 2 blocks at the end, about a 8% grade. The power is always on this event. We have seen massive changes in the GC, one of the few criteriums on the pro circuit where you definitely have to race your bike. And we're going to look forward to you experiencing Fayetteville at its best, the downtown entertainment district, and certainly a criterium that people have talked about, and certainly look forward to each of you experiencing this day. And hopefully we'll see you in May for the 46th annual Walmart Joe Martin stage race.
Race director Bruce Dunn does a great job putting on a great show and a great weekend out there in Fayetteville. Elite Men underway, just leaving the starting gate under the Walmart arch as we see our SIS Zoom room in the upper left corner. Some familiar pain caves for these guys after 3 days of racing. It's come to know a lot of these views very well. So we'll see if we get any early separation here. Now, Ellen, obviously on RGT, the criterium races a lot differently than the road race. I think the biggest difference is just the effort that you're putting out. It's a totally different type of workout on a crit day.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're able to see that just even immediately looking in the top left corner of the game screen. You can see just how variable the power is, regardless of the rider that we're focusing on right now. You're going to see massive differences in their peak power versus their average power. So that's where we'll start to talk a little bit about normalized power out there. But, just a lot of those enforced corners where you can only pedal so hard into these particular corners without wasting energy. So that's going to be a lot of strategy and gameplay on display today as the riders who are able to really understand where those corners are coming and just how much they can let off, and also of course considering drafting. So there's just a lot more at play today with having a 1 mile course versus a 40-something mile course.
We saw Zach Nair riding close to the front. All he really needs to do today is play a little bit of defense here. Just make sure that nothing major gets away. Obviously, he's got plenty of time to play with on the GC. 30 seconds, his closest competitor here. So I think you see Zach Nair just kind of sit back, watch the moves today, let his Project Echelon teammates chase some things, chase some breaks. This will be a good opportunity for some new names to get a stage win here today.
Yeah, it really feels like the win at stake today is a stage win for Nair's closest competitor versus Lee. To be able to get 30 seconds over him in today's stage seems pretty unprecedented as far as criterium racing goes, especially with no time bonuses to be had. It really all comes down to the time splits at the finish line, and unless Zach Nair were to have a catastrophic technological problem, I find it almost impossible that anyone would be able to get a 30-second plus advantage over him today.
All right, well, as we wait for these guys to work out first move of the day, we'll keep our eye on. I want to talk a little bit about this course, a unique criterium course. It's different than the standard four-corner downtown crit that you get so many times. As you see some jogs, especially heading into the finish. There's plenty of elevation on this one too. There's a lot of very short, steep ups and downs on this course. So it's not your typical flat four-corner sprinters course. You absolutely have to be able to go uphill on this one. You have to be able to have kicks. You have to be able to have intervals. And so that's where this race is going to be won and lost, especially on RGT. It's only 1.3 miles, but you see a max gradient of 4.6% at some point out there. So as you watch some onboard footage from the 2021 edition of the Walmart Joe Martin Stage Race, same course that they always use. You can see plenty of space, nice wide corners. The pavement's in good condition. But Ellen, the ups and downs on a crit course, 25 times up and down these hills, it's going to wear on you.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And that's where the riders who come prepared, as they say, luck favors the prepared. So the riders who come prepared today with a strategy, who are experienced with the gameplay element, and who have their nutrition dialed, their entire virtual setup, all of those things are going to play a very big factor in today's race.
So it gets tight through this section, that little quick jog before a downhill run to the finish. You want to talk about scary corners, max speed to the bottom of this one. This is where the criterium riders earn their crown, do what they do best, as you carry a lot of speed onto this flat section. And then one last little uphill kick again before the finish coming out of this corner. So it's certainly not a criterium specialist course, let's say, and that's why I think riders like maybe Zach Nair could still have a good day on a course like this.
Absolutely. Zach Nair and Luca Versli both a little bit more known for their suffering ability maybe than their variable power, but still have a lot of potential on a course like this just because of all of the elevation and just sort of how difficult I think this course is going to be for riders to read and to really play correctly.
Also one where you're going to have to come to the decision, do I coast, do I save my energy on the way down, or do I try and attack on these downhills? You can see these guys coming pretty close to maxing out the gearing into a sharp left-hand turn. So the game in RGT will scrub speed off there. Obviously the in-rail life course, everyone trying to carry as much speed as they can. And then a couple more lefts back up to the finish here. And this is maybe where the race is going to be best won and lost. You see this last little uphill kick before they get to the line. So, Ellen, if you can do a good 30 seconds right here, that's a race-winning move or a race-winning spot on the course.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the kind of intel that hopefully these riders have garnered either in watching clips just like this from a POV, or even having done a recon on this course virtually before. Just knowing exactly where you're going to be able to put down those final moves is so vital, and that it's part of what the early parts of the races are for, just sort of thinking, okay, I think that this would be a good place for me to put down my final few matches.
You can see how many riders just blow up on this last little bit up to the line. Riders getting shed left and right off the front. So if you don't save enough for this last little kick to the line, it's one of the really unique parts of this Criterium course. We also see a lot of successful breakaways in the in real life versions of these races. So I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, to see a group go away. It's a little tougher on these virtual courses, but it can certainly be done on a day like today. So looks like a few riders already trying to do that. Not quite successful yet, but they do have a little bit of space here away from the rest of the group. So it's just like playing the lottery. You can't win unless you play. Wow, some familiar names up here. Roca, McCarroll, Verslee, three of the strongest guys this weekend from the time trial and the road race. And looks like these guys behind realized what was going on up the road. Smart, Collins, Brearley, and Wilson, they're all going to get on this train. Yeah, and that's going to force the rest of the field to respond. So if they're hoping for an easy day early on today, they're not going to get it. These guys trying to split the field as Luca Verslee does what he does best here.
Luca Verslee started very, very hard yesterday. He raced hard all the way throughout, but it came down to Zach Nair's attack at the end of the race, and Luca Verslee just wasn't quite able to match it. So interesting to see him trying that same tactic again today. We had a little bit of speculation at the end of yesterday's race that if Luca Verslee had maybe played his cards a little bit differently, could he have been able to match the attack of Zach Nair? And I think we'll continue to speculate because it looks like Luca Verslee wants to continue with his strategy of starting hard and keeping that pressure going, hopefully all the way to the line.
The guys at the back of this race right now are thinking about selling their trainers on Craigslist, wondering how much they can get for a brand new Wahoo kicker these days, because it's painful when you have guys like this. And that's absolutely what Verslee is trying to do here, is just make this as painful and unpleasant as possible for these guys back in the group. If you're not an interval athlete, if you're not used to doing these quick efforts out of the corners, it's going to hurt today. Yeah,
absolutely it is. This course is going to be a tough wake-up call for some of these riders, and I can only imagine, having racers from all around the world, especially we think about some of our racers, racing out of New Zealand and Australia, the riders who are just waking up, or even our European racers who are at the end of their day, who I'm sure would much rather just go back to bed or go to bed. This is a very rude awakening, I think, for some of these athletes.
Little bit of separation here in this group, kind of snapping the elastic with Ray Wilson, the last one getting into this group. So that'll be 6, and then McCarroll and Walter trying to chase. Looks like a big group behind them. And that elastic gonna stretch back out to bring these new riders into the fold here. It's tough to get away on this grit course. Check in on our SIS Zoom room here. Much more intense riding in the first 10 minutes than we saw yesterday. You can see the effort of trying to cover these moves. A lot of time out of the saddle on a crit day like today.
Yeah, you can even just see the movement in these riders' upper bodies, kind of shifting and rocking back and forth. A lot of these riders yesterday, even recognizing some of their pain caves. I remember how stable and solid all of these riders looked yesterday when they were able to just sort of set it and forget it, is kind of what we talk about with just very consistent power. Not seeing a lot of that today. We're seeing a lot more motion in everyone's pedal stroke. So really goes to show just how hard everyone has to work to sort of maintain that high power with so much forced braking and recovery.
This is also a course where understanding the platform, understanding the game is really going to pay off on a day like today. You can save a lot of energy just by the repetition of scrubbing the speed off into these corners. If you truly understand how to do that, and you can save just 5 or 10 watts every time over the other riders in your group or the other riders in the race, that's going to add up over 25 laps of racing.
Absolutely. This is something that we talk about a lot in cyclocross, and of course there are a lot of comparisons to be made between criterium racing and cyclocross. You may be able to get away with powering through a full lap, whether that's sort of blowing the corners and not letting off the gas when RGT enforces that, the braking in the corners, but you're not going to be able to do that for 25 laps. Eventually, you are going to start to pay the price for those hard efforts for sort of, not taking the recovery where it's required. And so that's where we're going to start to see right now, we have a very evenly matched group of 6 at the front, but eventually as these laps continue to tick off, I think that we're going to see some riders are a little bit more efficient than others. And I think actually we're seeing Mason Roca here on the front, and I believe, his average watts per kilo is much lower than a lot of the other riders. So I think we need to keep an eye on Mason Roca to see if he is, as efficient as his power would indicate.
It looks like he's finding little spots to rest here. I mean, like right now, it doesn't look super intense. But he will get there, because we saw earlier, right here, he gets out of the saddle. Man, can you imagine this guy rolling up next to you in a crit, trying to muscle his way onto your line? I have at it, man. It's all yours.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of bike racers are grateful that Mason Roca has found his calling virtually and is not taking his basketball experience to the IRL racing, because, yeah, I'd let him have the line.
Can only imagine that guy standing in the paint trying to drive past that. Roca, a former professional basketball player, retired, started a family, and now racing bikes here in the Echelon Racing League. Here's Igor Kopsy. He was in that front group of 3 yesterday, one of our top 3 to the top of the climb. So Kopsy obviously feeling good this weekend. And it looks like he's forced a selection behind him in this group. So this is going to be 7 clear. And as this goes out to 130 meters, I would feel pretty good about this group sticking. Smart, Roca, Versli, Kopsy, Nair, Wilson, and Bjorklund, I think, are going to be your winners today in the selection lottery on the front.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there, Brad. This, I think, is as much of a selection as it is just the front of the race, with all of the best riders, I believe, represented in the front of this race. It's almost as if the other riders just weren't able to keep the pace. I don't know if it was a deliberate attack necessarily that caused that separation, but I don't see a lot of names not represented here. So I would be really, really surprised if the group behind were able to bring back, all of the riders that we've talked about all weekend.
Gap continuing to grow for these guys right now. You look at the wattage on some of the more wide open sections between these first 7 and the rest of the group. These guys peaking into the mid to low 3s, hitting 4 every once in a while. You see the riders down in the back group kind of peaking around 2 and 3 watts per kilo. Here is your current GC. So you compare those to the names in this front group. Nair made it, Verslee made it, Copsey made it, Wilson made it, Roca made it. McCarroll is missing from this group. And then I don't think Walter got in here either. So Bjorklund going to have a chance to move up if these guys do hold on to some significant time. Cardine not
Walter
there,
and McCarroll are the 2 riders that sort of missed out. Ian McCarroll was dangling for a while, but I'm now not seeing his name so far in our top 11 or 12. So I wonder if, that early on effort was enough to sort of start to sink that ship. Being solo in a criterium is a very, very tough place to be.
You see them working through some lat traffic already. Once you're out of the group, it is really, really tough to maintain these, 1 speeds and 2 power. So, if you don't link up with the group on a day like today, you're going to be getting passed pretty frequently. So, I think you'll see a lot of 1s and 2s out there solo today that just couldn't hang with the group. It's also really hard to stay with this group. Again, it's going to take more than a few races before you truly understand, just like real life racing, how to ride with a group. And you have to entirely relearn on RGT. So I wouldn't be surprised to see even great bike racers with great power that didn't make it to the end today.
100%. We've talked about this in previous stops in the Project Echelon series that, I've tried my hand at virtual racing when I was doing some training during the pandemic, and I'm someone who's I would say very proficient in criterium racing. I'm super comfortable riding in the group, drafting, just sticking wheels. And I got my butt handed to me day in and day out trying to do these virtual races. It's a completely different experience. And it takes a special type of person and skill to be able to figure out exactly where to meter that power. So how hard you have to pedal to not get dropped without wasting energy and sort of taking on that drafting ability. So there's a lot of gameplay. And I think that, if there's a rider that is really into video gaming and also into virtual racing, I think that might be the sweet spot for succeeding here on RGT.
If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have said that Venn diagram has a pretty small crossover. But these days we're seeing more and more riders committing to virtual racing and sort of bringing their in real life skills over to the virtual world, and vice versa, seeing some virtual skills being brought to these in real life races. Watching Ray Wilson right now, we're really looking at is the average wattage here, and then you see up in the upper left-hand corner, it also shows the amount of wattage that they're saving. So Copsey right now having to do 500 watts on the front coming out of the corner. And if you look at the wattage of Smart, Wilson, or Bjorklund, they're going to be doing maybe 30 or 40 watts less than Copsey because of the drafting coefficient built into the game here. So it will shave off a little bit on the uphill. And taking a look now, this is Christian Klevgaard. So, wow. Klevgaard has left the field and is now trying to join this front group. This guy trying to go across what was probably a 300-meter gap when he left that main group. This is a win or go home moment for Klevgaard. This goes one way or the other, either very well or very poorly. So we'll keep our eye on Klevgaard here, see if he makes it across. 200 meters back right now, but he's already made 150 meters up on the field behind him. So a bold move, but Ellen, if you look up the road and you know a move is going to go, sometimes this is what you have to do. Otherwise, you're going to be racing for 8th place.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think with what we're seeing, sort of just how determined the overall GC is today, it's really something that you're able to just risk it all. If he's in the group and he's not satisfied with finishing 10th or 11th or 15th, maybe he's not the best sprinter, so he really doesn't like the odds of doing a field sprint, why not risk it all? Worst case scenario, he comes up short, his day is over, he might not even finish, but at this point I think that some people are just willing to roll the dice. It's the final stage and there's really nothing to lose, but this is something that you have to commit to. There's no point in wasting your energy on just doing a tepid attack to try to bring back a group as strong as the one that we're seeing off the front. So Klevgard is really going to have to commit. He's around 400 meters back still, potentially, depending on the yo-yoing of the course, but yeah, he's still a very good distance away, but he's just going to have to commit to it because at this point he's already pushed his chips in.
Well, Mason Roca and Luca Versli not doing him any favors as they have now left the front group, and that's going to force these other guys behind him to start chasing. So this is a dangerous duo. Two guys who are obviously not afraid to do work. These guys are hammers, and they certainly know how to suffer. So they are going to put these other 5 on notice behind them as Versli and Roca pick up about 40 meters. This is a great situation for Versli here because if he can get rid of Zach Nair and somehow he and Mason Roca are able to ride away for the last 20 kilometers here. Remember, he needs to open 30 seconds, but it can be done. Crazier things have happened.
Crazier things have happened. It would certainly be crazy if they were able to do this, but seeing these 2 riders, yeah, I mean, they're definitely working hard, especially Mason Roca is looking a little bit tired. Zach Nair still dangling on. I don't know if this is going to go, but it looks like they want it to go. And so I think that's important for Zach Nair and for the rest of the riders in this group to know that these 2 riders want to leave him behind. He's going to have to stay on top of it and not let anything like this slip away.
Ray Wilson just tagged it back. Nicely done. And that'll be enough to shut down that group of 2. So see, 30 seconds, the time that Versli is trying to make up here. You have to make big moves like that, Ellen. If you're going to bring back 30 seconds in a crit, you've got to do a big move, and you got to do it early. Because if you wait and try and break away at 10K to go, 5K to go, whatever, you may win the stage, but not by 30 seconds.
Exactly. There's only so much time to be had in those closing kilometers. So that's something that can really work. Like we've talked about the Gambler's Preem, you can definitely win a stage that way if you catch someone off guard, but it's not going to necessarily yield a lot of time. It's just going to be enough to secure you the win. So I think that they're going to have to go early, and when they go, they are going to have to go 110% in order to be able to just maybe catch Zach Nair a little bit off guard, and be able to really get a big gap early on.
This would be a scenario in real life where you would start making deals with the other riders and saying, hey, you can have the stage win, Mason. If you want to get a win here on day 3, I'm more than happy to take you to the line if you help me beat Zach Nair by 30 seconds. So this is where you start to do a little negotiating in the group. They do have access to proximity chat where they'll be able to talk to everyone in this group in game. Maybe they had a little private chat when they went away together, just far enough to get outside the proxy chat zone. Although at this point, I would say most of these guys probably have each other on speed dial on Discord or iMessage or however they communicate, because they've been racing together for the better part of 3 seasons now in the era. A lot of return names here. So they're all familiar with each other in this group, that's for sure. I see 2 riders from the No Pins R3R squad making it into this split. Smart and Wilson, the 2 teammates. In fact, the only teammates in this group. Everyone else all alone. This looks like things calming down to me now, Ellen, after some aggressive early riding. This is kind of the reset. But again, Verslee can only take a little time to rest, and then he's got to go.
Absolutely, yeah. If Verslee has the GC in his sights, he's going to have to go very soon, but he's going to want to bring someone with him. He just doesn't want that person to be Zach Nair. We just passed the halfway point, so this is really coming down. At this point, we're coming down to the final laps. We're over halfway, and yeah, it's just going to become increasingly hard for Luca Verslee to be able to get over 30 seconds on Zach Nair now.
Well, it looks like this group going to take a little time to settle in. So I want to go back and watch the way that this one unfolded in real life in 2022, earlier this year at the Walmart Joe Martin stage race. They had coverage on GCN, so we got to see some of the other races up close and personal, including the elite men. Now, this was not the UCI men's race, but I want to go back and watch the last lap because I think the finishing sprint may play out similar here in the ERL. So our own Lauren Hall was on that call along with Bob Roll.
Leader Caleb Klassen on fire.
Good call, Bob. I think you just caught it. I mean, is he going to try and solo away? I don't know, but he is definitely the strongest out of the three, and he has essentially gapped them each time up the climb these last couple of laps. So looks like he's all in at this moment.
A little bit of trouble for Evan McCourt trying to stay on the wheels. Got to get back across on this false flat into the wind. Not easy. And if you can do so, he'll most certainly get a place on the stage in the podium. Let's see how Caleb plays this. He looks to be most certainly the strongest. And it's not a tactical sprint. It's all about pure power, it seems like.
Brute force. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as you turn that corner and you see that finish, we've seen him just stand on the pedals and essentially just separate themselves from these two guys. A little bit of conversation going on, or at least looking around.
That's maybe the only thing that could derail their chances for the stage win if they hesitate too much. I mean, even if they do that, there's no chance anybody's catching back on.
They're all kind of looking around now. Big, wide, sweeping turns.
Looks like Evan McCourt putting in a little bit of attack there.
Caleb's definitely going to make these guys work for it. He's just going to make them roll together.
Tiny little advantage for Evan McCourt, but that's been closed down by Prendergast to the advantage of Caleb Klassen. If he goes for it, though, I don't see anybody being able to be as strong as him, considering this climb to the finish line, Lauren.
Not at all, and especially even when we're just seeing them kind of open up those gaps to one another. He's basically saying, hey, look, I'm strong enough to close any of these gaps, so you guys might as well just go ahead and get in front of me and do that work. That's the gamesmanship being played right now, and they're starting to look around, slow up a bit.
Tactics coming into it, but not the peloton.
No.
Not coming into the frame thus far. So the podium up for grabs. There's the peloton now, but that will be for fourth and beyond. The first three, couple of corners before the finish. McCourt leading. Klassen third wheel. There's a sprint. McCourt leading it out. Prendergast on terms. Watch third wheel, last couple of 100 meters. Big, powerful sprint by Evan McCourt, though. It looks like he's going to get there first. Wow, what a ride.
Oh, man.
That is a surprise to me, Lauren. That is a good ride. Wow.
I could very easily see this coming down to a group of three, very similar to real life. But as you saw, Ellen, it's not a sprint at the end. It is, it's a 2-minute power effort in the last lap. And as we saw our in real life leader or winner leading it out from a few hundred meters out, it's going to be a power player's course.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I feel like that's just such good insight for these riders. You know, it just comes down to a very different finish than a lot of traditional criteriums, and I think the big factor here is going to be not going too soon, being able to maintain that effort once it starts. We saw that early on in today's stream when we were watching another race from one of those POV cameras. You know, the rider that we were watching passed by a lot of people who started that climb too early, because they do go up for a good while before they finally cross that finish line. So that's going to be, I think, a big factor today, is pacing that effort just right and not coming up too short at the finish line.
Down to 14K to go now, and getting into the territory where the chances of Verslee being able to pick up 30 seconds on Zach Narek are getting more and more narrow here. Smart pushing on the front. And this gap holding steady behind them at 330 meters. Actually not bad for this field. All things considered, 30 minutes in, they've only lost 350 meters to this group. And you can see why. Look at all the red numbers in that main group behind them. So I don't think they've quite given up the ghost either of the chances of bringing this one back.
No, definitely not. I think I would have anticipated a much bigger gap than what we're seeing between our lead group and the chase group. So if these riders could work together, I'd say that this is still within reason to bring it back, but I just don't know if those riders are going to be able to work together to the same extent that our leading group has been, because like you said, Brad, our riders off the front right now are also familiar with each other. They're obviously very, very familiar with the platform. So I don't know, you know, the experience level necessarily of this group. They could be talented bike racers, not experienced with RGT. They could be experienced RGT racers without as much bike riding experience. So unless they're really able to get together and motivate, I don't know if we're going to see this come back, even with these small margins.
You've got the 5 best riders in the virtual Walmart Joe Martin stage race in that front group, and they're all working together against this group. So it's like 5 Ferraris versus 20 Honda Civics at this point. You see McCarroll, the guy trying to get away here. McCarroll is also sitting inside the top 10 on GC. He was one of the notable missing riders. And so he may be one of the big drivers in this main group behind him. Guys under 13K to go now. For the most part, these 2 groups have stayed together. I'm surprised to see that this second group is remaining so large, especially with riders like McCarroll pulling on the front. We'll see if they close that gap anymore, holding at right around 400 meters right now. Oh boy. We have a Winnie sighting.
Oh, let me get her
air.
on the camera. I don't know how to work the camera. Oh, I'm backwards. I'm sorry.
Winnie's trying to stay off air. Ellen, would you like to introduce our newest commentator?
This is our co-commentator, Winnie. She's very experienced with mountain biking, but a little less experienced with RGT.
Well, she's learning, just like all of us.
Yeah.
Every day is a learning opportunity. Do we know Winnie's breed?
Winnie is a...
or lineage?
She said that's enough of that. She is a pit bull mix, half pit, some miniature schnauzer, some lab. She's a purebred mutt.
Well, she's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Facebook is lighting up right now. We have achieved peak engagement with the Winnie sighting.
I actually am not on the Facebook, so if you want to let me know what they say, I'd love to hear it.
We'll see if we can get some comments on air here. If you want to comment, we are monitoring the Echelon Racing League Facebook page. I know a lot of people have shared this, so wherever you're watching from, if you can navigate your way onto the ERL page and comment on the live video there, we'll see that, and we'll try and put some comments up on air a little later. I'm hoping you can share pictures in the comment thread. I'm not sure, but I'm hoping it gets flooded with people's own pictures of their dogs.
Yes, that would be the best case scenario.
Luca Verslee on the right-hand side of your screen doing his best to try to shake Zach Nair here, but at 10K to go, I think his GC hopes are slipping further and further away to win the overall here at the Walmart Joe Martin stage race. So if we don't see a move in the next 2-3K from Luca Verslee, I think that's going to be it for Zach Nair and his quest for the GC. But Verslee can still try and win the stage today, but I think pretty much everyone in this group is capable of winning this stage. It's going to be a really fun final lap. Do all 7 make it to the line together, Ellen, or do we see this group split even more in the last lap?
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if this group stayed more or less together till the final lap, but I also would not be surprised to see this group splinter almost entirely once they come across the line. So maybe they go into the bell lap all together, but I don't think that most of these riders are even going to be sprinting against one another. Just with the nature of this finish, I think that we could see riders coming across with a second or two in between all of them.
Roca and Kopsi putting a little work in on the front. See Kopsi into the red zone to try and close that gap. Brings everyone with him, but did force the other guys to ramp up the power. One more effort, one more interval to add to the list. Zach Nair responds to that one perfectly. Roca seems to have found an ally in Kopsi here, someone that's willing to try and lift the tempo on the front. That's exactly what Mason Roca wants to do. He is a punisher in a situation like this. His play is to just make this as hard as possible. Some of these other riders will just want to sit in and try and sprint it out on the last lap. They're all about efficiency, but Roca is all about brute force. Meanwhile, that group behind them holding at right around 500 meters back. So I don't think they're going to catch on today, but do have to give that group some credit. They kept the racing interesting, even though their chances of catching on to this front group were pretty slim. They kept those watts per kilogram high back there.
Yeah, definitely have to give them some credit. And also, you know, I feel kind of bad because, you know, these riders, they're back in the main peloton. You think that that could mean for slightly easier work, but definitely not for this group today. There is no easy place to be in this race at the moment.
These guys back through the line at just under 8K to go now. So at this point, it's all about how you're going to play this for a stage win. And I think the play in this group of 7 is maybe wait a little bit, just as Zach Nair tries to prove me wrong here with a little bit of space off the front. And then these guys are going to try and go over the top of it. All right, this is it. It's heating up here in the final few laps of the Experience Fayetteville Downtown Criterium as Verslee and Roca back up to their old tricks on the front. Roca staring actually both of these guys staring intently at the screen, waiting for that first move to go. It's a very tense time in the closing laps of a crit like this when you're kind of waiting for that last big move. I think the key to this one is to make a big move and just stick to it, like a 2 to 3 kilometer attack. I hate to say it, but just like Zach Nair did yesterday, I think Zach Nair probably has the best maybe minute or 2 minute effort, whatever he did yesterday, and he knows it. And I would expect that he'll try and use that same card today here.
Yeah, Zach Nair definitely, just based on yesterday's finish, has a very, very good situation to come out on top in today's stage. This tough closing half lap really suits him very well. So Zach Nair, for multiple reasons, really the rider to watch out for, the rider to beat today. But I don't know if it's going to come down to as much strategy as it is to just pure power once you get down to that final half lap.
Already spinning a couple guys out of the back. Looks like Smart and Roca having a little bit of trouble here. Roca's about to get back on, but Smart still struggling behind the group, so he may be the first victim of these late race attacks here. And you see Mason Roca doesn't want to go past the group. He immediately goes down to 0 watts per kilo once he gets in there. So he's just trying to sit on and fit in. I think that's going to be it for Smart. His gap continuing to go out. So we'll call this down to 6 in the front group as the No Pins R3R team loses one of their riders, but they've still got Ray Wilson up in the front group.
Looks like Smart is dropping pretty quickly, but he still has at least 500 meters separating him back to the rest of the group, but 5K remaining. So this is going to be a little bit of a battle to try to stay ahead of that swarming group that I'm sure would love to absorb him.
Yeah, that's got to be the game for Smart right now. At this point, it's defense for 7th place. You're not going to get back into this group because you have what is now 6 of the strongest guys in here all working together. And once you're out of that draft, out of that slipstream, as we said earlier, it's going to be near impossible to get back. So all Smart can do is try to hold off what is turning into a Rose Beast Mode train behind him. Look at this, 8th, 9th of what was 10th and 11th, all those white jerseys from the Rose Beast Mode squad. These guys may be the best organized esports team out there that we see on RGT. It's just, it's so hard to actually put 3 riders on the front and truly lift the tempo of a group, but the Germans are able to do it.
We have a lot of perspectives on screen now. We have our leading group, we have our chasing group, and then in the middle, we have Smart trying to hold them off for just another 4K and change. it's going to be a close one to see if he's able to stay ahead.
It's going to be a great story for Smart today, one way or the other. It's, this is always fun to watch. It's very similar to a solo breakaway situation where you're wondering if the field is going to catch the break before the line, except there are 6 guys that are going to stay away. So Smart just trying to hold off this field right now. We'll keep an eye on it. It's going to be interesting. Down to 4K for these guys up on the front now. I wish we had a SIS Zoom room video of Smart. He's not sharing his camera today, but that would be a painful looking camera, I think.
I think the background noise would just be the Jaws soundtrack. He's currently riding for his life, trying not to get caught.
Down to 260 meters back to the field now.
With just under 4K to go. So far, the math is not on his side.
Yeah.
He's losing over 100 meters per K.
And now 200 plus meters back from that lead group, as was expected. But the wild card is the gap back to the, what I'm going to call the third group on the road, with Smart being the second group. Meanwhile, waiting for an attack up at the front, coming up to 3K to go. This is getting into Zach Nair territory here. You can see how quickly these kilometers tick away on the downhill section after they go through the line. But obviously that'll slow down rapidly as they hit some of the uphill sections. Picked up almost 500 meters of climbing so far today, which is something to be said for a criterium course.
Definitely not insignificant for a criterium where you can race an entire race with basically no meters climbed. That's part of what I think is making this race unfold in the way that it is.
Smart holding on to his gap back behind him. About 300 meters back to the field. And now Versli Kopsy stepping on the accelerator up here at the front. Zach Nair in perfect position here. He's sitting in the slipstream. And so this will take him into the final lap here. Good preview of the finish right now. This is that last little kicker up to the line that they're headed up to. So kind of your last chance to get a look at it before the last time. Smart's gap down to 200 meters behind these guys. We'll stay with the leaders, but we are going to keep an eye on that gap. You see him down in 7th place, just stuck in the gap. Meanwhile, Ray Wilson, his teammate, driving the tempo up in this front group. Oh, here goes Roca. So Roca is going to go from 1.6K out. He'll be the first one to jump out of this group. Kopsy and Versli trying to go now. Zach Nair just behind them in 4th. Roca lets off. Let's see if they shed anyone that time. One more bullet fired. No, all back together. Not sure what that move was from Roca.
No, it's really interesting to look and see Roca. He was basically not pedaling. So I guess when they're on a little bit of a descent, he was actually not pedaling at all. And I don't think that we've seen that. Obviously, we haven't looked at every person's Zoom room, but definitely not seeing a lot of riders opting to completely coast. And so that's an advantage for Roca. The fact that he's familiar enough with the game and the strategy to be able to take those big moments to be able to coast, all of that adds up over the course of a 50-minute race to a 1-hour race. So I'm really curious to see how this final lap shakes out.
Well, he put a little in the bank on the way down and then immediately withdrew it here as he starts to accelerate towards the bottom of that descent. He used the early steep section to try to save gas and has since been brought back. Now Kopsey going to give it a try inside 350 meters to the line. So this is on to the final climb here. 4%, and they're not going to have a chance to attack late. So it's going to be Verslee and Kopsey going here. Wilson and Roca still in the hunt. Ray Wilson going to get a line on him. He can sit in this draft for a little bit. Perfect timing for Wilson, but he's got to stay on it with Kopsey on his wheel. Oh, and Kopsey going to make a late surge here. It'll go to the line. And I think Wilson held on unofficially. Ray Wilson going to get the stage win for the R3R No Pins team. Kopsey almost had him at the line there. Verslee going to hold on for third, and Bjorklund in for fourth as Mason Roca takes fifth, and your GC winner, Zach Nair, will hold on for what I think was sixth. Meanwhile, Smart holding on to a 70-meter gap ahead of these guys. Klevgaard trying to chase him down. And I think Smart will hold on for seventh here. Great ride for Smart.
That was a great ride. The math was not on his side for a while, so that took a very, very big effort to be able to hold off that hard-charging peloton.
Field sprint behind him. Going to put Brian Hodges into eighth place, the best of the rest after 6 go clear in the front group. Number 7 stays on in the gap, and then the field sprints for 8th place. Well, a new winner here in the ERL for Wilson. First time we've seen Ray Wilson get a win in 3 seasons of the Echelon Racing League. So we'll add him to the club. Alan, anything we learned from that final sprint as we look forward to our elite women's race coming up next? The way that one played out, there's certainly going to be a split. Well, we know there's going to be a Jackie Godby split, but the last lap for this core group of 5-6 riders, what can they learn from the way that this one played out today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really surprised with how things were so different from how it plays out for the in real life version of this race. So, you know, Ray Wilson was able to take, I think, a pretty surprising win ahead of some of our more animated racers. So I think a lot of the riders, maybe Mason Roca, Zach Nair, even Luca Verslee, maybe paying the price a little bit in the finish. Ray Wilson didn't do as much work in this group today. So I think that a little bit of smart conservation, could be the difference maker out there.
Well, you talked about watching Mason Roca on that downhill. One of the few riders zeroing out his power meter, has the lowest average watt per kilo inside the top 10 here with just 3.63, as everyone else did 4.5 for most of the day today. So in the end, it really just came down to those last few watts for Ray Wilson on the way up as he gets the win in the Experience Fayetteville Criterium, the third and final stop of the Walmart Joe Martin stage race here in the Echelon Racing League. So Kopsey second, Verslee third. He had a good race today too. Really, really aggressive out there. Bjorklund in fourth. Mason Roca, we talked about, salvaging 5th place after an aggressive ride as well. And then Zach Nair holding on for 6th place on the day, but enough to hold on to the overall win here at the Walmart Joe Martin stage race. So as we get ready for our pro women, they should be rolling here pretty soon. And here we go. Your women's start line inside 30 seconds to their race start. Well, the one thing we know for sure is that Jackie Godby is going to get some space on this group. That happens every race here in the ERL. But the question is, the group behind them, which always turns into a good battle. So we'll watch this first selection to figure out who the core group is going to be today. And then we'll watch how they play the game here in the crit. Hardest part of the race right here. Aside from maybe the last 300 meters, the initial selection when everyone leaves the start line, the early race energy, a lot of times has you wondering, when will things calm down? Well, in an hour-long criterium, sometimes they don't.
In an hour-long criterium, sometimes things calm down in 61 minutes.
All right, so Godby already getting away here. And this is the group that we're really going to be keeping our eye on. Actually, Miller going to catch on to Godby's wheel here. Maybe Jackie Godby going to give herself a rare rest day to just sit in the group here for a little bit.
That would be very interesting. This would be a completely different race than anything else that we've seen this season.
Miller going to try and hang with Godby as long as she can here today. We talked about this also. Riders sort of using Jackie Godby as a benchmark, and the goal being trying to stay with Godby longer and longer every week in the air rail. That means that you're getting better as Jackie Godby's getting better, but I think that's what Miller may be trying to do here, just see how long she can hang with Godby, keeping her in the group. Now, Godby's going to shine on these uphill sections. This is where Miller is really going to have to make sure that she keeps an eye on Godby if she wants to stay with her. Braun and McGregor going to try and go too, so both of these riders going to challenge themselves today to try and hang with Jackie Godby.
This is super interesting, super exciting to see, a very different start to these races than we have, in the last couple stops in the series, but also definitely different than yesterday. Looks like Godby's going to try to go again, but Kim Miller and Braun McGregor feeling obviously very good today, and I wonder how that's going to shake out with the rest of the group.
Looks like Valkenhorst could be the last one to get in here. A little split back behind them to York, Larson, and Anders. So this is going to turn into three riders, or three groups on the course. Godby solo, Ayala, Miller, McGregor, and Valkenhorst in group 2. And then York, Larson, and Anders behind them. All right, so now we look at the wattage between these two groups. You can see Jackie Godby with a consistently higher wattage than the group behind her. Part of that is because she's solo. These riders in the group are saving wattage. But part of that is because Jackie Godby is one of the greatest virtual cyclists of her time. Well, Godby back to doing what she does best, very similar to the way that things played out yesterday. But again, what we were really watching is for second place behind her. So as we go back and take a look at the Mount Sequoia Road Race yesterday, Godby looking very similar in her position, but it was the Larson, Ayala, Miller, Anders, McGregor group that really made things interesting. It started with a group of 6. They were looking really strong, everyone riding together. You see 3 of the Velocity Vixen jerseys, 3 of the Rose Beast Mode riders. Eventually, they took it down to 4 as it got more and more selective here at 38 kilometers of racing to go. And then eventually they would shed one more onto the closing laps, or the closing kilometers, I should say, of the Mount Sequoia Road Races. They got it down to just Miller, Ayala, and McGregor. And so the big question was, who was the best climber in the closing kilometers out of this group of 3? And Bronwyn McGregor answered that question with an exclamation mark. Saw Miller trying to hold on. Ayala didn't really contest it as McGregor put in some huge wattage and made her way up to the front for the stage win. So McGregor got to be feeling good heading into the day today. Saw her riding pretty strong on the front back of the main group. Her Velocity Vixen teammate, though, Erin Ayala, certainly going to be targeting this day. She has proved to be one of the best sprinters in the Echelon Racing League this year. So maybe McGregor had her day yesterday, and we'll see if Ayala can scrape together a field sprint win today behind Jackie Godby.
Yeah, Ayala is definitely the rider most known for her sprint in this field. She's just super powerful, and you can kind of see that when we look at her power profile compared to that of Jackie Godby. But I don't know if this course is going to be the best for Ayala, just given this really hard finishing kick. So this could be another battle between her and McGregor, of course, never counting out Kim Miller. So it's still, I think it's going to come down to probably the same 3 that we saw yesterday, unless, Vulcan Horse is able to have a big comeback after yesterday's ride. I think that we're going to see a pretty similar shakeout to yesterday.
See York behind them, about to catch on to the back of this group, as it looks like she left Larson and Anders behind. Good move from York here to try and catch the train leaving the station.
Yeah, I wonder if York is a rider that's a little bit more suited for the shorter efforts than the longer efforts. She may have had to play it a little bit more conservatively yesterday because, if she knows that she's not a rider that is, super comfortable going the distance, she's not going to be able to go with our leading group. But today, with this race being a little bit shorter, being just 35K, this might be a little bit of a confidence boost for her if she's a shorter distance rider.
See a few riders just peeking into the red zone here to make their way up at 30K to go. I don't think we'll see any concerted effort for these riders to try to get away. I think this is mostly just about trying to save as much wattage as you can early on. Try to take the Mason Roca approach to riding in the first few kilometers here. Go back and take a look at yesterday's results as we talk about the efficiency of the riders. We always like to look at who had the most efficient day yesterday. Certainly would have had plenty of time to work out their watt per kilo, but you see Bronwyn McGregor with a 3.35. Kim Miller held it at 304. Ayala very close at 306, and then Jackie Gobby getting her workout in on the front at 4 watts per kilo. So probably a higher average watt per kilo today, Ellen. Would you expect to see because of the short, fast efforts coming out of the corner, does that raise the average, or do we even know?
You know, there might be a way to know this, but I don't know it. It would really depend on whether we're looking at normalized power or regular power, because there is going to be so much coasting. So some of these riders, if it's averaging in the zeros, they're going to have significantly lower power today. But that's why a lot of criterium racers will look at their normalized power, because it's taking out any really, really big dips in power. So that's not going to count towards the average. So I'm assuming that the watts per kilo for today is calculated based on the entire power file. So based on that, I think we'll see slightly lower power today, but you know, it really just depends on how it's calculated.
Godby widening her lead up over 700 meters in front of the group now. Looks like she's dropping her average down a little bit. We also have our men's B race underway over in a separate virtual world, a separate virtual Fayetteville world, where looks like Marco Lopez back to doing what he does, riding on the front of this men's B group. Looks like some new names joining this one today. I see Joe Bernier down in 9th place. Joe races in our para races earlier. Marco Lopez, a little wave for the camera there. He's got a new setup today, a new camera angle.
I think it's a totally different setup. Usually he has a closet door to his right. I think he might be in a new room.
Maybe the most muted kit that we've seen from Marco Lopez, the fashionista of the men's B race.
You know, it's hard to go wrong with an all-black kit, but yeah, definitely the least energetic that we've seen so far. Maybe his kit is representative of how he's feeling today.
There's Gargillo back at the front in his foundation kit. Looking good, Dave. Gargillo keeping it tough out there, out of the saddle, and it's going to put him at the front of the group. There's Joe Bernier over in our men's B race. Now, Joe is known for his waves when we get him on air here, so we'll see if we get a Joe Bernier wave. Joe, a Paralympic gold, silver, and bronze medalist. Went to 3 Paralympics, 2012, 2016, and 2020. He's got a gold, 2 silvers, and a bronze on the track. Joe rides in the men's C3 classification. Out of the Chicagoland area, he rides with that Triple X racing team on the road a lot. Same team as Jackie Gobby, or maybe Athletes by Design. Chicago's got a lot of good clubs. It is Athletes by Design. Joe's club hosting some of their winter races on RGT. So Joe's been spending a lot of time racing on RGT. He's got a little humor about him. He lost his right arm in an industrial accident. That is his para classification. So he rides with one arm. All of his social media handles are, I think it's Lefty13. Back over to Jackie Godby at the front. Every women's race starting to pick up some lapped riders here, as is to be expected with Jackie Godby. Meanwhile, the Ayala, Valkenhorst, Miller, and McGregor group still all together. Looks like Ayala taking a much stronger approach to riding today, much more aggressive, much more present at the front. Maybe trying to wear some of these other riders out. Obviously, her teammate, Bronwyn McGregor, arguably the strongest out of this group based on the time trial and road race results yesterday. So Ayala and McGregor have to figure out what to do about the two Rose Beast Mode teammates, Valkenhorst and Miller. It's a rare occasion where you have a 2 versus 2 scenario. Tactically, this is not something that you come across a lot in real life, where you have two teammates, two sets of two teammates.
Yeah, that is a very sort of fun outcome of today's race so far, having these two sets of teammates. And like you said, Brad, it's so rare to see that happen at the front of races like this. Where typically really the goal is to just have one teammate represented in any breakaway, but because today's field, this isn't as much of a breakaway as it is just a selection, I think that we're able to see this sort of fun dynamic play out.
Talk about ways McGregor can try to help Erin Ayala to win a sprint today. One of them would be trying to do a lead out, which is pretty tough on RGT because the other riders can very easily steal that lead out. There is no positioning, so it'll kind of kick you off the wheel. It's pretty tough to drag a teammate to the line in a sprint. What McGregor can do for Ayala, though, is try and wear out the other two Rose Beast Mode riders. Keep that tempo high on the front. Let Ayala sit at the back and draft. So maybe as we get down towards the end of this, we see McGregor taking some bigger pulls on the front. Not quite attacks, but just trying to wear out Valkenhorst and Miller, forcing them to close gaps, things like that. And then letting Ayala kind of sit in, draft, and then maybe launch her sprint in the last few hundred meters.
Brad, I think that's a really great observation about not being able to do a lead out so much. On RGT, something I hadn't really thought of, but yeah, there is no ability to position. You can't, hold a wheel necessarily. Someone is able to just hop in front of you. So I think that that's something that I hadn't really considered, not being as experienced with racing on RGT or just on any real virtual platforms, to be honest. That's something that you don't really consider the impact that it can have on the way that a race plays out.
Seems like we learn something new every day here in the Echelon Racing League. Yesterday, it was the hydration dilemma that riders faced on a long day, because in a virtual race, we learned, well, obviously, can't get off the bike to go to the bathroom. So you have to be very careful with how much liquid you consume during the day to make sure that you're staying hydrated, but not too hydrated.
Yeah, it's definitely seems like a balancing act. And I'm seeing my favorite thing from Jackie Godby. We're seeing her little plateaus. So this might be her doing a workout, or maybe this is how she's riding and then dealing with the corners. But
this looks like it'll work out to me. She is still in training mode here. She's about to lap Larson and York, the two Velocity Vixen riders. These two riders doing a nice job riding together. Again, it is really hard in this game to link up. And as you said, if you're not paying attention for 5-10 seconds, it's so easy to lose the wheel that you're with. And so Larson and York doing a nice job staying together, the two Velocity Vixen teammates. Godby cruising at 55K an hour with a little downhill section off of the start-finish line here. We saw in the in real life videos, there's a couple places here where I think, unless you have a huge gear on that bike, you probably will max out the gearing. 5311, whatever, you'd be pretty close to spinning that out on some of those long downhills. It's going to be pretty easy to achieve that terminal velocity on the way down. So even Jackie Godby using the chance to kind of lighten up on her wattage. There's that York and Larson group we were talking about earlier. Beth York, the Velocity Vixen team.
Oh, this is the first time that, at least in my memory, we've seen York in the Zoom room. And I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about Lopez and his exciting kits, but this is our first time talking about purple hair on the
Nothing
feed.
beats this hair. This
Absolutely
is
nothing.
hands down the style winner. Sorry, Marco, you've been dethroned.
Sorry, Marco, you're going to have to up your game.
You see, even out of the saddle, staying with Larson here, that requires some close attention to the screen. You can see barely breaking eye contact with the screen. That's maybe the hardest part of this virtual racing. At least I think you and I commiserate about that. Just being able to stay on the gas, perfectly focused, modulating that power for the full hour of racing here. There's not a second to look away.
No, definitely not. And that's why, you know, some of these riders have their own very private space where they're not going to be disturbed. There's no distractions. But, you know, behind York, just during that one clip into the pain cave, it looked like there was some action going on behind her, maybe a house member doing something. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that can just seem so stressful when you're doing a race, that all of a sudden someone's in the room and they might be asking a question or might, you know, need something, and you know, just any one of those moments that break your focus can, you know, really can make for a lot more work on the back end.
Godby down to 21K to go. And should be coming up on the back of the chase group here, the second group on the road pretty soon. Looks like Miller and Valkenhorst doing work at the front. In fact, doing a lot of work on the front. Here's Kim Miller putting the hurt on the field here.
You know, I think the big difference in today's race compared to yesterday's race, of course, you know, different courses and whatnot, but the key difference is that today's race is going to be under 1 hour, whereas yesterday's race was over 2 hours. So very different type of physiology, different type of fueling strategy. So any riders who may have improperly fueled yesterday, if they were able to have a good dinner, they're going to maybe be able to survive a little bit longer today. You know, so I think that we could see something different. Valkenhorst got dropped just before the closing moments of yesterday's race, but this could be a big moment for her to be able to improve on that result from yesterday if she has slightly different physiology that suits these shorter efforts more.
See the difference again in the power profiles here. You are absolutely right that Jackie Godby is hitting her plateaus here. Making the best of the hour on the trainer. Now this is something, obviously, Jackie Godby will have a training plan written for her Talk a little bit about what it's like from a training perspective, Ellen, in terms of what the role of a coach is for a cyclist. And when we talk about workouts, what does that mean?
Oh, those are some big questions, Brad. You know, having a coach can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different athletes. Of course, the main thing that pretty much all coaches are going to be doing is writing a workout, and a workout can really be anything. It can be, you know, a prescribed easy day where you're just going out and going for an easy ride, all the way up to a highly specific and detailed, you know, exercise plan where you're going to be doing this many seconds at this particular power or heart rate, and then you know, this type of effort. And it can be extremely nuanced, and sometimes it can be vague. I know, like, I worked with Coach Alan Lim, who we see a lot on the talking about the Ceres platform. For me, sometimes he would say, I want you to go out and ride hard enough that you can talk, hard enough that you can still talk, but that it would be annoying if you had to talk. And so sometimes you get these highly specific workouts, and sometimes you get things that are a little bit more open to interpretation. But, you know, the other thing that a lot of coaches are there for their athletes is being, you know, an ear and someone to listen to and someone to be supportive. Especially with racing, I think comes a lot of stress of, what if I'm not ready? What if I'm not prepared to perform? And you know, a great coach is always going to be there for their athletes to help kind of talk them through some of the challenges and concerns of bike racing.
Sounds like it's as much a mental game as it is a physical game, especially in trainer races like this. That would explain why Dr. Aaron Ayala is so successful here. The sports psychologist knows a little something about tuning the mind up as well. And she finds herself in quite the battle right now. Everybody into the red zone. Ayala out of the saddle.
Looks like Valkenhorst is dropping off just a little bit. She's not too far now, but she's not currently on screen.
About 20 meters off the back. You can see her in the SIS Zoom room, not panicking yet. She's going to put in these short efforts to try to close down the gap. That's what you have to do. It's only going to get worse from here if you don't close this gap now. So Valkenhorst trying to ease into it without going too hard. It's also really easy on RGT to sort of over push. Oh, look at Valkenhorst suffering up there. You can see it on her face. And I think that head shake might be the realization that this one might be a little tougher to close down than she had hoped. So Ayala hit it hard on that climb. I think she was the aggressor, and that might have been what shook Valkenhorst out of the group. So if that was the case, bravo to the Velocity Vixen team, because sensing some weakness, and now that scenario we talked about, 2 versus 2 with the Velocity Vixen teammates and Rose Beast Mode teammates, all of a sudden becomes 2 versus 1. Now they just have to do it again and get rid of Kim Miller. Surprised to see that Ayala was the one doing the work there. I would have thought that would have been a Bronwyn McGregor move, although maybe we missed it and McGregor started it. Ayala just finished it. This is a tough place for Miller now. This is a scenario that we've seen in real life where you have 2 teammates and then 1 solo rider. There's a couple ways that you can kind of beat up on a rider like Kim Miller in a scenario like this. Take turns, taking big pulls at the front, maybe gap her off the back a little bit, the old Saturn sit-up move where you put her at the back of the line of 3, let the second rider in line gap that off a little bit, and then chase back up. Miller going to keep a close eye on these 2 on the front.
I don't know if this Saturn sit-up would work on RGT, would it? Because that rider would just ride through them?
Yeah, you could use it to sort of just let the lead rider roll away a little bit, because if they did stay on your wheel and they were matching the power of the second rider, then you would be able to let that first rider go. So, yeah, you're not going to be able to fully block them. Miller is going to give them a taste of their own medicine on the way back. She says, all right, you want to go hard on the climbs? Let's see how you do going hard on the climbs every time, not just when you want to do it. Miller seeking revenge for her fallen teammate Valkenhorst out of the breakaway.
She's like, well, if I'm going to be the only person, the only teammate represented in this group, just going to be the only teammate off the front. I'll do it myself. I actually like this, kind of call the bluff a little bit. Yeah, you may be able to go hard once and drop my teammate. Can you go hard 2 or 3 times and stay with me? So Miller putting in a dig on the way up. Both riders staying with her, but did say take some deposits out of the wattage account. Yeah, and this is a little stressful for Kim Miller being the only rider with 2 teammates, but we've definitely seen it happen before where the lone rider is able to take the win and outsmart 2 teammates. Sometimes I think it can be maybe just having a little bit too much confidence, in fact, as the 2 teammates are like, yeah, we got this in the bag. But I can think of dozens of examples where the lone represented rider was able to take the win, even when it seemed like the odds were not in their favor.
Now Miller in a little bit of trouble here. She'll close the gap just fine. Getting up to the top of this climb here at 17K to go. Just under. The all-German squad of Beast Mode presented by Rose, with Miller and Valkenhorst the 2 strongest on the weekend. You see Anders back there today hanging in for 8th spot. So started Dor, Corollas, and Chrome earlier in the ERL series. So now Miller all by herself, the lone Beast Mode Rose jersey up on the front. Back up to Jackie Godby, inside 15K to go for her now. Over to our men's B race. Marco Lopez still in charge up at the front of this group. Looks like they've shed a few out of here. This one a little smaller than when we last checked in. So we'll call this, if we include Hackleton at 30 meters back, that's 5 clear. Or might end up as 4 plus 1. Lopez looking a little sweatier in the cave now. I think our 4th place rider, Watkins, has my favorite virtual jersey out of this group while we're handing out fashion recommendations from the booth here. Although I think Gargillo has the best in real life look in the bottom left there.
Yeah, it's hard to beat a sweatband, especially with good hair and a headset over top. We have to give honorable mention to top right, matching the jersey to, I believe, his avatar. Or is that just a coincidence?
Nope.
Yeah.
That is Vaishnav on the front here. And then, of course, Lopez with the stealth look. Very, very chic today. I'll also going with the all-black look I noticed on Sunday. Maybe it's like Tiger Woods, red on Sunday. You go with the all-black kid on Sunday.
Maybe they're going Black Sabbath.
Nice. Nice. Quite the collection of jerseys behind Mr. Vaishnav here. You see him shifting through the gears.
Sweatband.
Yeah. It doesn't match the jersey though, so it's like a B- on the sweatband.
Yeah, it's hard to beat Gargullo.
Doug Hackleton in his U.S. Military Endurance Sports Kit. Nice to see the veteran supporters here in the ERL. Been seeing more and more riders from that U.S. Military Endurance Sports program on the virtual platforms. So nice to see Doug out here with us in the men's B race. All right, these guys at 13K to go, pretty similar over in the women's race as well. Let's take this chance to thank some sponsors here in the Echelon Racing League, and when we come back, we'll watch our women's A and men's B race wrap up their last 10K.
Come on, move. Of course, there aren't any spots. A few minutes won't hurt anybody. Thanks, Grandma.
Paralyzed Veterans of America works tirelessly every day to create a more accessible America. Let's leave the accessible spaces to the people who actually need them. Whatever the reason, excuses don't excuse. Join PVA and be part of the solution. Honor the spot.
Jackie Godby and Marco Lopez at the front of their respective races here. Jackie Godby leading our women's A race on the left. Marco Lopez leading your men's B race on the right. The difference being that Lopez has some company with him, and Jackie Godby is out on her own on the front. Coming up under 10K of racing to go for Godby here. And Godby still plugging away with the picture-perfect power profile here.
Yeah, and she's doing high power nonetheless. It's not, it's always impressive, even when you're just managing to ride very smoothly with, more sustainable power. But she is doing some pretty massive efforts out there today.
See the jerseys waving in the background for Godby. Even on a day like today, you're going to get pretty sweaty with these short, fast efforts. And so staying cool also a key part of the indoor racing experience. We always see Godby's soigneur, John Cooper, on camera every once in a while. He comes in with the fully zipped up fleece, the hat, although that's also because he has usually just wrapped up his own race as well.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting a signature Jackie Godby look right now. She's pedaling, super focused, jerseys waving in the background. You can see just her little tufts of hair, blowing in the wind, looking pretty much like a superhero. This is a signature Jackie Godby Zoom room right now.
Our producers have found John Cooper. If you look just in the bottom of the screen here, you can see John. I hate to be creeping into the Godby Cooper residence here, but hello, John. Oh, there we go. Oh, we got a graphic for him and everything. I love it.
I have to say I'm a little relieved that I'm not the only creeper noticing John Cooper in the mirror.
Back to what is now a group of 3. Valkenhorst now completely gone out of this group. We saw her slowly drifting off the back earlier. That gap has now gone up to 1.5 kilometers. So it looks like she pulled the plug on the chase effort up to Ayala, Miller, and McGregor. And all of a sudden, this looking a lot like yesterday's finish. Remember, it was McGregor that went earlier. Now, we've been talking a lot about Erin Ayala today just because Ayala is the best sprinter in this group. And this is a criterium day where typically sprinters will have their sort of run of the course. But this course is so unique with this last uphill kick that I am wondering if this may be a better finish for McGregor because there's so much elevation in the last lap. There's so many ups and downs. I don't know if Ayala's sprint translates to an uphill finish like we have here in downtown Fayetteville.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation, Brad. I was kind of wondering the same thing myself a little bit earlier. And of course, Erin Ayala is, I think, like a natural criterium racing, a natural sprinter. So I think this length of race is a little bit more suited to her, just being on the shorter side, being such a punchy rider. But I do think that McGregor has a really good chance today, just with that monstrous effort that she showed yesterday. Just today's finish is a little bit non-traditional for a criterium.
And Miller going to be the wild card here. I'm not sure which way to lean on Kim Miller's finishing kick. It's really about a set amount of time and the effort that you can do in that time. Yesterday it was about 2 minutes on the final climb, and Zach Nair, who has great 2-minute power on the men. Obviously, Jackie Godby has great 2-hour power in the women. She stayed away. McGregor put in a push in her last kick up to the line. But today, it's more like a minute power, maybe even less on that last climb up to the finish line. So we'll see if Ayala's power translates uphill here in RGT in a little under 9K from now. I guess the same tactics apply here in this group of three. You have two choices. You can either launch a gamble early or take the insurance to sit in and try and sprint it out. That's going to come down to probably who's feeling the best out of this group of three. Wouldn't be surprised to see all three of these riders drag racing to the line either. Maybe this final hill is the great equalizer and all three sprint it out to the line together.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, these riders are all so evenly matched. It would not come as a surprise to me to see this come down to a bunch sprint. And I do think, we've talked a lot about this finishing climb and how this may not suit Ayala, but at the end of the day, she is just a very, very strong rider who is able to just stand up and give it the business. So I would not be surprised if, she does come back and really create a great sprint at the end.
Back in the red zone for all three of them, tipping 7 watts per kilo here up at the front for Kim Miller. Big effort on the way up the hill here. I wonder if Miller is trying to play the long game in the last 8K here and try and wear these two out. McGregor and Ayala doing a good job of keeping her within striking distance, be able to get there, but certainly dipped into the reserves for that one to close it down to Miller here. So Miller establishing some early dominance in that finishing climb. Maybe starting to test the legs here. You've only got what I think will be 4 more times up that climb. So Miller starting to put the pressure on the Vixens. McGregor a little late to get back into the group, but she'll get there no problem. Just wasted a few watts. I'm watching Ayala and McGregor to see if there's any communication, see if they reach for their devices at the same time, or if we can watch them talking back and forth, maybe trying to work out some strategy here. But a lot of times, you don't really need a strategy here because it's just going to be whoever feels the best. We're going to throw as many watts as we can at the problem in the final climb and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, at the end of the day in a race like this, a pretty good strategy is don't get dropped, sprint hard at the end.
And I'm not even sure that Miller's effort earlier was intentional in trying to wear these riders out. It may just been some natural separation as happens on a climb, but we'll see the next few times up. If she keeps hitting it and keeps that pressure on every time on that way up to the finish, that tells me that that's where she's going to try and win this race. That's where she's going to try and shake these two Velocity Vixen riders. Yeah, and here she goes again. So Miller is putting pressure on because from the front here, from the bottom of the climb, she's first into the red zone. Miller trying to shake these Vixens early. I like this strategy. When you're outnumbered, you got to take some big swings to knock these two down.
Yeah, and she looks really steady as well. Honestly, all three of the riders still look really solid. It looks like McGregor might be working a little bit harder than some of the other riders, but also that sometimes riders are just really hard to read as to how hard they're going. You know, Mason Roca in our men's race, I think, is a little bit more animated than maybe that of Luca versus Lee. So you would think that he was working so much harder than Luca when really, in reality, they're all going extremely hard. So it's so hard to say, but it does look like Kim Miller up until this very moment was very, very composed.
McGregor, the one that's staying on the wheel here. Ayala in third spot at the back of this group, and now Miller gapping McGregor. This is where this race is going to happen. If McGregor and Ayala can stay with Miller to the last time up the climb, I think they'll be able to hold on and pass Miller to the finish.
Yeah, I think that this is a little bit of a feather in Ayala and McGregor's cap if they're able to keep her in their reins, because clearly Miller is worried about it coming down to a final sprint, so she's trying to force that separation earlier. So if she's unable to drop them, I think they know that she'll probably be coming up a little bit more fatigued and a little less confident into the final couple hundred meters.
Godby just picking up Julia Valkenhorst as she continues to lap riders here. Down to 3.2K to go for Godby. Valkenhorst and Godby going to hang out together for a little bit here.
Nice that Jackie Godby gets to ride with someone for a few minutes.
It gets lonely out there at the top. Going to go by York and Larson. Valkenhorst doing a good job.
This is a really big effort from Valkenhorst. It's almost as if she wasn't able to maybe do that effort so early on, but once she had a slightly longer warm-up, it looks like she's really able to maintain a pretty impressive amount of power. So this is kind of an interesting situation happening here. Just looking at her watts per kilo, she was doing, you know, pretty significant power riding with Jackie Godby, which is interesting coming this late in the race and now being a lap down on our chasers.
Well, just like Godby, Valkenhorst trying to make the best out of a day alone on the road. So trying to up that wattage a little bit, challenge herself when Godby comes by, as Jackie Godby makes her way under 2K now. She'll be heading out for her last lap on this virtual course in downtown Fayetteville. Meanwhile, Miller staying on the gas here with 4.2K for this group of three. McGregor going to counter this move. And Ayala trying to hang on here. It's going to be a great finish here.
Yeah, the punch is already being thrown here. Bad news for Ayala. She's still in it, but this is going to take a big effort for her to get back. She's now 25 meters behind, so she is really going to have to start sounding those alarm bells if she wants to get back on and contest the podium here today. And it looks like Miller's even started to form a little bit of a separation over McGregor. I think she's going to be able to bring it back, but yeah, this is going to be a very, very dynamic few K.
Looks like Ayala in some trouble now. gap over 100 meters. And not coming back. So I think this is what Miller was trying to do here, accomplishing exactly what she set out for and shaking one of these Velocity Vixen riders. So now the pressure on Bronwyn McGregor to beat Kim Miller to the line.
Yeah, she's definitely still in her sight, you know, only 20 meters separating them. It looks like it's going out even further, but she still has 3K and change to maintain this gap. So still a lot of wiggle room, but it looks like this is what she's wanted all along. So it is hard to imagine that she's not going to be able to hold this gap, because it just seems like this is exactly how she wanted it to shake out.
Yeah, perfectly played by Miller today. This one works out for her. This is, we were talking about earlier, the importance of using the strategy in a situation like this. And I think Miller knew that she was going to be outgunned in a sprint against Erin Ayala, who has been pretty much unstoppable in the flat sprints, and Bronwyn McGregor, who has been smoking these riders over the last 2 days in the Walmart Joe Martin stage race. So tactically, I think this was Miller's only play, certainly the best play, and it looks like it's paying off so far for her. Meanwhile, Jackie Godby inside her last 200 meters on the way in, where Godby will continue her undefeated streak in Season 3 of the Echelon Racing League. Perfect so far in Year 3 of the ERL. She's going to go 3 for 3 this weekend, as turned in the fastest time in the Devil's Den time trial, the Mount Sequoia Road Race yesterday, and another solo win today in the Experience Fayetteville Downtown Criterium. Jackie Godby, your winner here today, but the battle is Bronwyn McGregor trying to hold on to Kim Miller. Godby still going all in on the day and still cooked afterwards.
Yeah, she really looks, it's so remarkable how hard she's able to go without anyone really contesting her. The fact that she's able to put in just such a massive effort and then come across the line completely smoked with really no external competition just goes to show how internally motivated she is.
Ayala back to 180 meters back. She's going to be out of this one, so now this will be a head-to-head battle in the last 1.5K between Kim Miller and Bronwyn McGregor here. That's McGregor on the left, Kim Miller on the right. And this turned into a good old-fashioned drag race between these two. I think the odds makers probably going to tip towards McGregor here just based on past results this weekend. When you're hot in a stage race like this. But I think we are seeing Miller riding a different race than she has before. Tactically, Miller is riding on a different level today.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still a kilometer for her. If she starts to wind it up super early, she may be able to achieve a little bit of a separation over McGregor. But I think once we get to the point that McGregor stands up and starts to go, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to go with her, especially if yesterday was any indication. But, we still have just over a kilometer to see how things shake out. But yeah, this is going to take a very, very powerful effort from Miller in order to be able to challenge McGregor on this final drag.
Inside their last 1,000 meters now for these two. Waiting for a jump if it's going to happen. If not, they just drag to the line together. Down to 600 meters. You see McGregor checking the power a little bit. Here goes Miller. She'll be first to launch. McGregor responds right on time. Now McGregor can afford to sit on Miller here. That's going to be the play, I think, for Bronwyn McGregor. What she's trying to do is just stay in the draft of Kim Miller. Let Miller hit it hard, save that wattage, and then try and make the pass at the last minute. Let's see if McGregor can do it today.
Miller pulling away a little bit. McGregor's trying to run out of real estate, but still 200 meters left. So she's standing up now. She's going to try to bring her back. A couple meters of separation, but it looks like now she's going to go, and I think that she's going to go for good this time.
Caught Miller off guard. Did you see Miller didn't get out of the saddle until McGregor went by her? That is exactly how you want to launch an attack. So it's going to cost Miller a couple seconds on the uptick to get up there. Could not have been a better attack from Bronwyn McGregor here. The perfect timing lets Miller go, sits on the wheel, drops back a little bit, and then slingshots to the front for Bronwyn McGregor. She will hold on for second place, and Kim Miller going to have to settle for third. The Velocity Vixens have another great race in the Echelon Racing League as Bronwyn McGregor takes another field sprint behind Jackie Godby for second place. Erin Ayala not able to hang with that group today, but she will hold on for fourth place as her Velocity Vixen teammate takes second place out there today. Ayala not going to get the chance to sprint here in the Fayetteville Criterium, but she'll have plenty more chances to do that. All right, so Ayala making her way through the line. That'll lock up fourth place for her with two Velocity Vixen riders inside the top five out there today, with McGregor in second and Ayala in fourth. As they finish up, let's go to our SIS Zoom room where Emma Watson has our race winner.
Go.
Thanks, Brad. I'm here with this weekend's Triple Crown winner, 3 for 3 on the weekend, Jackie, with the time trial, road race, and today's crit. How are you feeling after all this?
Absolutely blasted. Oh my goodness. I mean, we got 3 races that hit every single energy system, and I would be lying if I said the first thing I wanted to do was not just sit down, close my eyes, and eat some chocolate right now, because oh my goodness, this was a rough weekend that hit every energy system.
Compared to yesterday's race, which is a longer race, much longer race, this one was more of a crit, more of what we're used to on the Echelon Racing season. So what was your mindset going into this race, and what did you achieve?
So I'm going to talk a little bit about my whole year preparation here, because Joe Martin stage race in particular has a special spot in my heart. I've done it in like 4 iterations through virtual racing now. And both my husband and I actually have Joe Martin crit specific workouts in our routine that we do on a daily basis. I kid you not, we set it up with the powers for this crit, hitting that 30-second, 500 watts up the hill, rest around the backside, rinse and repeat 18 to 20 times. So coming into today with that specific mindset preparation, I knew what I had to do. I knew those powers, and I knew this was going to be a very, very tough workout. It is one of the toughest that I do because, this is such a great race and we've had fun coming back time and time again. So, looking to put ourselves on the line mentally and physically with something that we know just wrings us out to the maximum every single time, to the point that we make a point of having it be in our workout rotation.
So elaborate a little bit more. How are you going to use this workout, this race, to elevate your game going into the future?
So this is a fantastic race. And that 30-second sort of anaerobic threshold capacity and repeatability is one of the most difficult systems to work. I come from a background of swimming where I did that 200-meter, 2-minute distance. And one of the most integral parts of training for that was these 30-second repeats. And what I love about 30 seconds is that it's mentally so doable. You can count down, you can see the end, it's right in front of you. On this course, you can see the end of that hill, you can see the finish line, it's right there. but you have to do it again. And you never completely recover. So you can build up, you can get that sprint, you can get that endurance, you can build up that lactate, and you can get this amazing workout. You can really push yourself beyond what you think you can do because it's only 30 seconds. And then you come back around, do it again, and you're like, all right, well, this sucks, but like 10 more pedal strokes, I got this. And, you can see that interval taking down. It's like, all right, I got 18, I got 17, I can do this. And so for me, at least, it's a very good way of pushing myself to these levels that I didn't think were possible. When I first designed this workout, I was like, all right, well, 450 watts, that's insane. That's a lot. But as I started doing it, with those 30 seconds, I could just push it up, 460, 470, got to the point where I was doing 500. And mentally, that's awesome to be able to say, I can hold 500 watts, just feels so cool. So, I really do give a lot of credit to this race, to that style of working out. And it's a lot of fun. And I feel like I have progressed as a rider because of this series and the levels to which it's pushed me to.
Amazing analysis. Thank you, Jackie. One last question. Where does chocolate fit in all that?
Oh, chocolate is a constant. Chocolate does not change. So we have a couple of new flavors to try. We're working ourselves through a tour of chocolate right now. We've got like this little taster pack from Trader Joe's. So it's single origin, match the single origin coffees that we've been doing every morning. Coffee before, chocolate after. It's quite nice.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations for this weekend.
Thank you so much.
Back to you.
Bye.
There you go. The magic formula: chocolate, coffee before, chocolate after. We could all learn something from Jackie Godby there, as she wraps up her third win in 3 days. Meanwhile, these three finishing up as well. We'll let Anders, York, and Larson make their way in here. This will be another good 3-up battle between these three. And there you go, your top 5 on the day as Valkenhorst made it in, with Jackie Godby finishing just under a 4 watt per kilo average. Pretty consistent average watt per kilo that we see for Jackie Godby out there. It was interesting to hear her getting excited about being able to hold 500 watts. I'm sure she'll be back here next year being excited about holding 550 watts.
Yeah, it's really interesting just to hear how much intentionality there is behind what she does, and I don't think anyone who knows anything about Jackie is surprised by that, but I do think it's really interesting. It just goes to show, when you put that effort in, this is, the kind of results that you can get when you're that focused and you're that deliberate. So very interesting to see, this stuff is not happening by accident to Jackie Godby.
Well, these riders going to have just a few more opportunities to meet before the ERL championships, and then for a lot of these riders, the national and world championships will be in between there, as we have our next ERL race coming up February 18th before the championships here on the 25th. So one more single day race. A lot of riders will use the weekend before with the Ride with the Pros to kind of preview the race, preview how it's going to play out before getting back to racing on the 18th and then wrapping up our championship on the 25th. So Jackie Godby has just one more day to win before she can say that she swept an entire ERL season here on RGT. And then I would expect to see her winning the championships as well. But we've seen so many great battles unfolding. That group of women that we just saw wrapping up, and then this group of 3, York, Larson, and Anders, on their way in right now. So we'll watch their finish before heading out here from the final day of the Walmart Joe Martin stage race. A couple Velocity Vixen teammates riding together here, and then Anders a little further back. Looks like York going to put in a little effort to the line. Looking good, Beth. And then Holly Larson getting up onto the wheel. So you can see the elevation profile in the upper right, just at the bottom of this last 300-meter climb up to the finish. As if 3 days of racing wasn't tough enough, they have to throw a hill at the end in downtown Fayetteville, but it makes the finish all the sweeter.
Larson going into the pain zone for a second before dropping it back down. You can just tell, just based on the color changes of these riders, just how hard they are trying to, keep it together. Obviously, super maxed at this point. Hard to even hold the pain or capacity zone for too long, but looks like Larson is going to have the advantage over York.
Nice finishing push from Holly Larson. She will end up in 6th place on the day. Beth York going to go 7th for the Velocity Vixen team as Jackie Godby takes another win on the day. So that'll do it for us from the Walmart Joe Martin Stage Race. Congratulations to all of our finishers, and we'll see you back for the final single day of racing in the Echelon Racing League, February 18th, before our championships on the 25th. For Ellen Noble, my name's Brad Soner, saying thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time in the Echelon Racing League.